Hey everyone. Tonight we're going to dive into the wild, winding journey of Marco Polo, the Venetian merchant whose travels stitched together the medieval West and the mysterious East. Picture yourself in a bustling Venetian market, the air thick with salt and ambition, as a young man sets off into a world of deserts, empires, and glittering courts. You probably won't survive this journey unscathed. Sandstorms, bandits, and all, but Marco did. And his story changed how Europe saw the world. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off to this tale. Now, turn down the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's get started tonight. You're standing on the edge of a Venetian canal, the water lapping softly against mossy stones, the air thick with the scent of salt, fish, and ambition. It's 1254, and Venice is a city that hums with life, merchants shouting deals, sails snapping in the breeze, and whispers of far-off lands drifting through the markets like smoke. This is your world, a city built not just on water, but on dreams of wealth and discovery. You're Marco Polo, born into this golden age of trade, where ships carry silk, spices, and stories from places most people can't even pronounce. Venice is the queen of the seas, her merchants sailing farther and bargaining harder than anyone else in medieval Europe. You can feel the pulse of it all, the clink of silver coins, the rustle of maps, the promise of something bigger just beyond the horizon. Your family's house sits near the Rialto, where traders haggle over saffron and stories. Your father, Niccolo Polo, is one of them. But he's not here. He's been gone since before you were born, chasing fortunes along the Silk Road, somewhere in the vast, mysterious East. You're raised by your mother and uncles, surrounded by ledgers and the dull thud of cargo crates being unloaded. The house smells of ink and wax, with maps pinned to the walls showing lands you can barely imagine. Persia, Cathay, places where the sun rises over golden roofs and strange gods rule. You're just a kid, maybe 6, running through the narrow streets, dodging sailors who smell of tar and talk of Constantinople's domes or the cold winds of the Caucasus. Their tales aren't bedtime stories. They're half-truths, half-dreams, carried on the breath of men who've seen too much sun and too little sleep. You grow up fast in a city like this. By 10, you're learning the family trade, how to weigh a bolt of silk, how to spot a fake coin, how to listen when a trader's voice drops low, hinting at dangers or treasures. Venice teaches you to be sharp, curious, and a little skeptical. You hear about men lost to desert sands, ships swallowed by storms, and cities where emperors wear robes worth more than your whole house. One story sticks with you. A merchant who saw a palace so vast it dwarfed St. Mark's, guarded by men with curved swords and eyes like hawks. You wonder if your father's seen it. You wonder if he's still alive. Here's a weird detail. Venetian kids like you sometimes played a game called Marco Polo, not named after you yet, but a chase through alleys, shouting names of far-off ports like Acre or Trebizond. Historians still debate whether it was really a thing back then. But imagine the irony, you, a boy, destined to wander, dodging friends in a game that echoes your future. It's almost too perfect, like Venice itself is teasing you with a glimpse of what's coming. The big moment comes in 1260, when you're 6. Venice is at war with Genoa, its rival across the sea, fighting over trade routes that stretch to the edge of the known world. The Battle of Constantinople happens that year, a messy clash of ships and egos that shifts control of the Byzantine capital. It's not just a fight, it's a reminder that the East is where fortunes are made or lost. Your father and Uncle Maffeo are out there, somewhere, in the thick of it, trading while empires clash. You don't know it yet, but their absence is shaping you. Every story you hear about them, Niccolo's sharp deals, Maffeo's knack for languages, plants a seed. You're not just a merchant's son. You're a boy who dreams of roads that don't end, of a world bigger than the lagoon. You're not rich, not noble, but you've got something better, a restless mind. At night, lying in a creaky bed, you stare at the ceiling and imagine your father bartering with men in turbans or crossing deserts under stars you've never seen. Venice is your home, but it's starting to feel small. The canals are your playground, but they're also a cage. You want to know what's out there, beyond the sails and the stories. And here's a little joke to lighten the mood. Why did the Venetian merchant cross the canal? To confuse everyone on both sides. You're not crossing canals yet, but you're about to cross continents. By your teens, you're tall, lanky, with eyes that catch everything, a flicker of a trader's hesitation, the way a sailor ties a knot. You're learning Latin, a bit of Greek, enough to read the letters your uncles get from far-off partners. You're good with numbers too, calculating profits in your head, while older merchants still fumble with abacuses. Venice is teaching you to see the world as a puzzle, each piece a port, a deal, a danger. You don't know it yet, but you're being forged for something extraordinary. The city's wealth, its hunger for the new, its whispered tales, they're all preparing you for a journey that will make your name echo across centuries. And then, one day, the door creaks open. A man steps in, weathered by sun and years, his cloak dusted with the grit of roads you can't even imagine. It's your father, Nicola, back after 15 years. He's not alone, Maffeo's with him, their eyes carrying the weight of empires. They've seen the East, walked its markets, knelt before its rulers, and they've brought something back, a message from a man called Kublai Khan, the most powerful ruler in the world. You're about to learn your place in their story, and it's not a small one. You're 15 now, standing in the dim light of your family's house in Venice, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and wax. The year is 1269, and your father, Niccolo, has just walked through the door after being gone your entire life. He's taller than you imagined, his face carved with lines from deserts and deals, his voice low and rough from years of shouting over market crowds. Next to him is your uncle, Maffeo, broader, quieter, with eyes that seem to hold secrets. You've grown up on stories of their travels, half-believed tales of golden cities and endless roads, but now they're here, real, smelling of dust and something sharper, like foreign spices. You're not a kid anymore, but your heart's pounding like one. This is the moment Venice stops being your whole world. They sit you down, their cloaks still draped over their shoulders, and tell you about the East. Not just any East, but the court of Kublai Khan, the Mongol Emperor whose empire stretches from the Pacific to the edges of Europe. You listen, wide-eyed, as they describe his palace in Khanbalic marble halls, silk banners, gardens that make Venice's piazzas look like backyards. They've traded there, bartered with merchants who speak in tongues you've never heard, and seen things that sound like dreams. Paper that passes for gold, black stones that burn like wood, armies that move like rivers. Here's a weird detail: Kublai's court used fish scales as armor, polished to shine like silver, something no Venetian would believe unless they saw it. You're hooked, each word pulling you closer to a world you can't yet grasp. The big event comes when they reveal why they're back. In 1266, Kublai Khan gave them a message to deliver to the Pope. The Khan, curious about the West, wants Christian scholars and priests to come to his court, to teach, to debate, to share their faith. It's not just a request. It's a summons from a man who rules millions. Your father and uncle spent years traveling back, crossing deserts and mountains, dodging bandits and blizzards, to bring this message to Venice. Historians still debate whether Kublai was genuinely curious about Christianity or just playing diplomatic chess. But for you, it's a spark. The East isn't just a story anymore, it's a destination. You lean forward, elbows on the table, as they talk about returning to the Khan. They need someone young, sharp, someone who can handle the journey and the court. Your father's eyes land on you, and it's like a key turning in a lock. You're 17, not a warrior or a priest, just a merchant's son with a quick mind and a hunger for more than canals and coins. They choose you not because you're special, but because you're theirs, and because you've got that Venetian knack for seeing opportunity where others see risk. Why did the Polo family trust a teenager with an emperor's summons? Because in Venice, even kids learn to haggle with the world. Your mother's not thrilled. You can see it in her tight lips, the way she grips her shawl. But Venice breeds wanderers, and you're already imagining the road, the creak of caravan wagons, the sting of desert wind, the chance to see what your father's seen. You're not naive. You know the Silk Road isn't a fairy tale. It's a gauntlet of sandstorms, thieves, and fevers. But you're also not scared. Not yet. You spend the next year preparing, learning scraps of languages, Persian, maybe some Mongol, studying maps that look more like guesses than guides. You practice riding, packing, keeping your cool when a deal goes sour. Venice is teaching you one last lesson. The world rewards those who move. The day comes in 1271. You're standing at the dock, the lagoon glittering under a gray sky. Your pack is heavy with supplies, your head heavier with dreams. Niccolo and Maffeo are beside you, their faces set, ready for the road. You're carrying letters from Pope Gregory X, replies to Kublai's request. Though the Pope's sending no priests, just you, a teenager with no title, no training, just a name and a chance. You glance back at Venice, its spires and sails fading as your ship pulls away. Here's a joke to ease the tension. Why don't Venetian ships get lost? Because the canals teach them to always find home, but you're not sure you'll ever see home again. The boat cuts through the water, headed for Acre in the Holy Land, the first step on a journey that will take years. You're not just leaving Venice, you're leaving everything you know. The East is calling, and you're answering. Not because you're brave, but because you're curious. You want to see the cities, taste the spices, hear the languages that fill your father's stories. You're Marco Polo, and you're about to become a bridge between worlds. A boy from a city of water, stepping into a sea of sand and stars. You're 17, standing on the deck of a creaking ship, the Mediterranean stretching out like a sheet of glass under a blazing sun. It's 1271, and you've just left Venice behind, your father Niccolo and Uncle Maffeo at your side. The air smells of salt and tar, but your mind's already racing ahead to the Silk Road, a name that sounds like a promise, but feels like a dare. You're headed for Acre, a crusader port in the Holy Land, the first stop on a journey to deliver Pope Gregory's letters to Kublai Khan. You're no knight, No scholar, just a Venetian kid with a sharp eye and a heart full of questions. The world you're stepping into is vast, unknown, and doesn't care if you make it. Acre hits you like a fever dream. The port is a chaos of languages: Arabic, Latin, Greek merchants haggling over ivory and amber, crusader knights in chainmail glaring at local traders. You smell saffron and sweat, hear the clatter of hooves and the call to prayer. Your father leads the way, his stride sure, while Maffeo mutters about the price of lodging. You're carrying the Pope's letters, sealed with wax, and they feel heavier than they should. From Acre, the real journey begins, not by sea, but by land, along the Silk Road's tangled veins. You join a caravan, a string of camels and carts stretching across the horizon, headed through Armenia and Persia toward the Mongol heartland. The road is no storybook path. It's dust in your throat, blisters on your feet, nights so cold, your breath hangs in the air. You cross deserts where the sun feels like a hammer, mountains where the wind howls like a living thing. Bandits lurk in the shadows of cliffs, and you learn to sleep with one eye open, your hand near a knife you barely know how to use. Here's a weird detail. Some caravans use camel dung as fuel for fires, its sharp stink clinging to your clothes like a bad memory. You laugh it off, joking with a trader. Why do camels always look smug? Because they know their poop's worth more than gold out here. The big event comes in Persia around 1272. The Mongol Ilkhan, Abaka, welcomes your caravan. His court, a mix of silk tents and armed riders. It's your first taste of the Mongol world, fierce, disciplined, but curious about you, the pale-faced boy from the west. Abaka's men question your father about Venice, about the Pope, about this Christ they've heard of. You watch, silent, soaking it in. The Ilkhan's death soon after delays you war and succession make the roads too dangerous. Historians still debate whether this delay was a stroke of luck or a curse, as it forces you to linger in Persia, learning its customs, its languages, its rhythms. You pick up Persian phrases, mimic the way traders barter, and start to see the world not as a Venetian, but as a traveler. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months. You pass through ghost towns scarred by war, their walls crumbling like old bones. You sleep under skies so clear the stars feel close enough to touch, waking to the scent of sage and camel sweat. In Badakhshan, you fall ill, your body burning with fever, and for months you're stuck in a mountain village, sipping bitter herbal brews. You recover, but the road doesn't get easier. The Pamir Mountains loom next, their peaks dusted with snow even in summer, the air so thin it feels like breathing through a straw. You cross the Gobi Desert, a wasteland of dust and mirages where water is rarer than mercy. Your father teaches you to ration sips, to watch for vultures circling a bad sign in any language. You're not the same kid who left Venice. You're tougher now, your skin browned by the sun, your eyes sharper, catching details others miss. The way a trader ties his turban, the pattern of tiles in a Persian mosque, the sound of a Mongol drum in the distance. You start keeping mental notes, not because you plan to write a book, but because you can't help it. Every mile is a story, every face, a puzzle. Here's another joke to keep you going. Why don't deserts ever forget travelers? Because they keep your footprints forever. But the Gobi doesn't care about you. It buries men alive in sandstorms, and you're lucky to cross it with your life. 3.5 years after leaving Venice, you're standing at the edge of the Mongol Empire, sometime around 1275. The air smells different here, cleaner, sharper, with a hint of pine. You've made it to Chengdu, Kublai Khan's summer capital, a city of tents and pavilions that looks like it could vanish with the wind. You're exhausted, your boots worn to scraps, but you're alive. You're about to meet the most powerful man in the world, a ruler who makes European kings look like village chiefs. You're Marco Polo, and you're not just a merchant's son anymore. You're a bridge between worlds, about to step into a court that will change everything you thought you knew. You're standing at the gates of Chengdu, Kublai Khan's summer capital, in 1275. The air carries the scent of pine and incense, and the city sprawls before you like a dream woven from silk and ambition. Tents of white felt gleam under the sun, their edges embroidered with gold, while horsemen in leather armor patrol the perimeter. You're 21 now, your clothes tattered from 3 years on the Silk Road, your skin roughened by desert winds. Your father, Niccolo, and Uncle Maffeo walk beside you, their faces set, carrying the Pope's letters like a fragile key to this strange new world. You're about to meet Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis, ruler of an empire so vast it makes Venice feel like a speck. The palace isn't what you expected. It's not a fortress of stone, but a city of pavilions, their roofs curved like waves, surrounded by gardens where peacocks strut and fountains murmur. You step inside, the air cool and heavy with the scent of sandalwood. Kublai himself sits on a raised throne, his presence filling the room like a storm held in check. He's older than you imagined, his beard streaked with gray, but his eyes are sharp, sizing you up like a merchant weighing gold. You bow, your heart thudding, and your father presents the Pope's letters. The Khan's translators murmur, and you catch fragments of Mongol, Persian, and languages you can't name. Here's a weird detail. The court's floors are covered with carpets so thick you feel like you're walking on clouds, woven with patterns that seem to shift when you blink. The big event is your introduction. Kublai takes an interest in you, not your father, not Maffeo, but you, the lanky Venetian kid who's barely said a word. Maybe it's your youth, your quick eyes catching every detail, the jade cups, the silk robes, the way the Khan's advisors lean in to whisper. You speak a little Persian now, enough to answer his questions about Venice, about the sea, about this Pope who sends letters but no priests. Kublai laughs, a low rumble, and you realize he's not just a king. He's a man who collects knowledge like treasure. Historians still debate whether Kublai saw you as a curiosity or a tool. But in that moment, you feel the weight of his gaze, and it's like the world shifts under your feet. You're not sent away. Instead, you're invited to stay. The Khan gives you a place in his court, not as a diplomat or a soldier, but as an observer, a foreigner whose lack of ties makes you useful. You're given quarters, a small room with a low bed and a view of the hills, and you start learning. You pick up Mongol phrases, mimic the court's formal bows, and watch how power moves here, not through swords, but through words and loyalty. The court is a mosaic of cultures, Chinese scribes, Muslim astronomers, Buddhist monks, all orbiting Kublai like planets. You're out of place, yet you fit, your Venetian knack for trade helping you navigate this new world. Why did the Khan trust a kid from Venice? Because he knew a blank slate could hold 1,000 stories. Days turn into weeks, and you're dazzled by the empire's scale. Khanbalik, the winter capital, makes Chengdu look modest streets wide enough for 10 carts, markets bursting with silk, spices, and furs from lands you've never heard of. You see paper money for the first time, flimsy sheets stamped with the Khan's seal, accepted as if they were gold. You taste foods that burn your tongue, drink mare's milk, fermented into something sharp and strange. You're not just a guest, you're a sponge, soaking up every sight, sound, and smell. Here's a joke to keep it light. Why don't Mongols play chess? Because their empire's already a checkmate. But it's not all wonder. The court has its shadows, whispers of rebellion, spies watching every move, punishments swift and brutal. You see a thief flogged in the market, his cries echoing over the stalls. You learn to keep your mouth shut, to listen more than you speak. Kublai sends you on small tasks. At first, carry a message, report on a market's goods. You ride out with Mongol escorts, their horses faster than anything in Venice, their eyes scanning the horizon for trouble. You're learning to see the empire, not as a story, but as a machine, vast and intricate, held together by will and fear. You're still Marco Polo, but you're changing. The boy who left Venice is gone, replaced by someone who can read a room, speak 3 languages, and ride a horse without falling off. You're not just surviving, you're thriving. A Venetian in a Mongol world, carrying the weight of 2 cultures in your head. The Khan's court is your new home, but you're already wondering how long you can stay before it claims you completely. You're 21, riding across the endless steppe, the wind biting your face as you clutch the reins of a Mongol horse. It's 1276, and you're deep in the Mongol Empire, a world of grass, sky, and power that stretches farther than you can fathom. Kublai Khan's court is behind you, but his orders are in your hands, a sealed scroll tasking you to inspect a distant province. You're no longer just Marco Polo, the wide-eyed Venetian kid. You're an emissary now, trusted by the most powerful man alive to be his eyes and ears. The air smells of earth and horse sweat, and every hoofbeat reminds you how far you are from Venice's canals. The Silk Road's trials are your life now. You've crossed deserts that bake you by day and freeze you by night, mountains where the air's so thin your head spins, and rivers that churn like angry gods. You've faced bandits once, near Bukhara. You outran a gang of riders, your heart pounding as arrows whistled past. You've learned to barter for water, to spot a sandstorm's haze on the horizon, to sleep with your boots on. Here's a weird detail. Some Mongol tribes smear their faces with yak butter as sunscreen, a greasy trick you tried once, laughing when it smelled like spoiled milk. Why do travelers always look so calm? Because they've already survived worse than you can imagine. The big event is your first major mission for Kublai. In 1276, he sends you to Yunnan, a lush, wild province in the empire's southwest. It's a land of jungles and rivers, far from the open steppes, where tribes speak languages even the Mongols don't understand. Your job is to report on the roads, the crops, the mood of the people, any whispers of rebellion. You ride for weeks, your escorts grim-faced Mongols who joke about your soft hands but respect your quick tongue. You see things that burn into your memory. Villages perched on cliffs, markets selling birds trained to fish, salt lakes that shimmer pink under the sun. You scribble mental notes, knowing you'll need to recall every detail for the Khan. Historians still debate whether Kublai sent you because he trusted your judgment or because you were expendable, a foreigner with no local loyalties. Either way, you're in deep, navigating a world where a wrong word could cost your head. You learn to bow low to governors, to charm traders with your broken Mongol, to watch for the flicker of a lie in a man's eyes. Yunnan's people are different, darker skin, brighter clothes, rituals that involve chanting to spirits you don't recognize. You see a Buddhist temple with golden statues, a Muslim call to prayer in a mud brick mosque, a shaman burning herbs to ward off ghosts. The empire's diversity stuns you, a patchwork held together by Kublai's iron will. You're not alone on these roads. Your father and uncle are often elsewhere, on their own missions, trading or carrying the Khan's orders. You're the young one, the one who adapts fastest, picking up phrases in Chinese, learning to eat with chopsticks, laughing when you fumble. You're good at this, too good, maybe. The Mongols call you Marco the Curious, a nickname that's half tease, half praise. You notice things others miss, the way a bridge's stones are carved to fit without mortar, the pattern of a weaver's loom, the smell of coal fires in cities bigger than Venice. Here's a joke to keep the mood light. Why don't Mongols write travel guides? Because their empire's too big for one book. But the road isn't kind. You fall ill again in Yunnan, a fever that leaves you shivering under a pile of furs. You recover, but it's a reminder this empire doesn't care if you live or die. You see cruelty too, taxes that crush farmers, executions in market squares, entire villages moved to build a new road. The Mongols rule with fear, as much as awe, and you're learning the cost of their greatness. You ride back to Kambalik, your report detailed but careful, knowing Kublai's advisors will dissect every word. You describe the rice fields, the rebel whispers, the strange custom of washing feet before prayers. The Khan listens, nods, and sends you out again. You're changing, hardening. The boy who dreamed of adventure is gone, replaced by a man who knows the weight of a glance, the value of silence. You're still Venetian, still Marco, but the East is carving you into something new. You're not just crossing the Silk Road, you're becoming part of it, a thread in the empire's vast tapestry, wondering how long you can keep riding before you forget the sound of Venice's waves. You're 22, standing in the heart of Khanbalik, Kublai Khan's winter capital, in 1277. The city hums like a living thing, streets packed with carts, merchants shouting in a dozen tongues, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and burning coal. You're no stranger to markets, but this one dwarfs Venice's Rialto, a maze of stalls selling silk, jade, and spices you can't name. You've been in the Mongol Empire for 2 years now, and Kublai's court is your new reality. You're Marco Polo, the Venetian kid who's become a trusted pair of eyes for the most powerful man alive. The palace looms ahead, its marble walls gleaming, its roofs curved like dragon wings. You're about to step back into its orbit, and it feels like walking into a storm. The court is a world of its own, a labyrinth of power and ritual. You pass guards with curved swords, their eyes tracking you like hawks. Inside, the air is cool, scented with jasmine and myrrh, the floors covered with carpets that swallow your footsteps. Kublai Khan sits on his throne, surrounded by advisors, Chinese scholars, Persian astronomers, Mongol generals, all watching you as you bow. He's taken a shine to you, not because you're special, but because you're different. You're a foreigner, untied to the empire's factions, and your Venetian knack for observation makes you useful. Here's a weird detail. The Khan's dining hall uses plates made of porcelain, so fine you can see light through them, a luxury Venice could only dream of. The big event is your first major assignment as Kublai's emissary. In 1277, he sends you to inspect the province of Hangzhou, a city of canals and gardens that makes Venice look like a village. Your job is to report on its wealth, its defenses, and any signs of unrest. You ride out with a small retinue, carrying a golden tablet, a paisa, that marks you as the Khan's man, a pass that opens gates and silences questions. Hangzhou stuns you, bridges arching over water like stone rainbows, markets buzzing with silk and tea, temples where monks chant under golden roofs. You see paper money everywhere, accepted without question, and coal fires heating homes in ways Europe hasn't imagined. You note it all: the number of boats, the mood of the merchants, the way a governor's hands shake when he speaks of taxes. Historians still debate whether Kublai trusted you because of your honesty or because you had no one to betray him to. Either way, you're in deep, riding through lands where a misstep could mean death. You learn to read people: governors who smile too wide, traders who whisper about rebellions. You pick up more Chinese, enough to barter without a translator, and you start to understand the empire's pulse. It's vast, but it's fragile, held together by Kublai's will, and a network of roads called the where riders carry messages faster than Venice's ships. Why did the Khan send a Venetian to spy on his empire? Because you can't bribe a man with no roots. You're not just a messenger, you're a witness. Hangzhou's canals remind you of home, but they're wider, busier, lined with houses that float like dreams. You see a festival where lanterns drift into the sky, glowing like stars you can touch. You taste rice wine, sharp and sweet, and laugh with a merchant who calls you the pale barbarian. Here's a joke to keep it light. Why don't Mongol horses ever get lost? Because they've got the yam to guide them home. But the empire's beauty hides its edges. You see farmers taxed to starvation, soldiers enforcing order with whips. You report it all, careful to balance truth with tact, knowing Kublai's advisors will weigh your words like gold. You're changing, fast. The boy who crossed the Gobi Desert is gone, replaced by a man who can ride for days, speak 3 languages, and spot a lie in a glance. You're still Marco, still Venetian, but the East is sinking into your bones. You notice things others miss. The way a temple's incense lingers, the pattern of a silk robe, the sound of a city waking up. You're not just surviving the court, you're thriving, a foreigner who's learned to belong without belonging. But at night, lying on a silk mat, you wonder about Venice, its canals a faint memory. How long can you live in someone else's empire before it becomes your own? You're 25 now, riding through the rain-soaked forests of Burma in 1280, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and jasmine. You're Marco Polo, no longer the green Venetian kid, but a seasoned emissary of Kublai Khan, sent to the edges of his empire to report on its pulse. Your horse's hooves sink into the mud, and your Mongol escorts grumble about the damp. But you're too busy taking it all in the Emerald Hills, the chatter of unfamiliar birds, the distant chant of a Buddhist monastery. You've been in the Mongol Empire for 5 years, and Kublai trusts you to see what others miss. Your paisa, the Khan's golden tablet, hangs heavy around your neck, a reminder that you speak for the most powerful man alive. Your mission this time is to inspect the southern provinces, places like Burma and Annam, where the empire's grip is looser and rebellion simmers like a low fever. You're to report on trade routes, local rulers, and any whispers of defiance. The journey is grueling. Jungles tangle your path, rivers swell with monsoon rains, and mosquitoes swarm like tiny bandits. Here's a weird detail. In some villages, people chew betel nuts, their teeth stained red, grinning at you like they've just eaten rubies. You try it once, spit it out, and laugh when a local calls you soft. Why do travelers always carry stories? Because they're lighter than gold, but worth more. The big event is your visit to Pagan, a Burmese kingdom of golden pagodas and rice fields, in 1280. It's a major moment in Kublai's reign, the Mongol invasion of Burma, part of his push to expand south. You're not a soldier, but you're there to observe, to report on the campaign's progress and the land's wealth. You see Mongol cavalry clash with local warriors, elephants lumbering through the fray, their trumpets echoing over the hills. You note the city's defenses, its temples packed with statues, its markets selling pearls and teak. You meet a monk who speaks of peace, while soldiers sharpen their blades outside. The contrast sticks with you, beauty and blood, side by side, the empire's heartbeat. Historians still debate whether Kublai sent you to Pagan to spy or to learn, whether you were a diplomat or a glorified scout. Either way, you're deep in it, navigating a world where loyalty is a tightrope. You learn to charm local chiefs with gifts of silk, to listen when they complain about taxes, to watch for the flicker of rebellion in their eyes. You see things no European has: paper kites used to signal troops, bridges woven from bamboo, rituals where dancers move like they're floating. You taste rice cooked with coconut, feel the humidity cling to your skin, and scribble mental notes about everything: the number of boats on the river, the mood of the markets, the way a chief's hands fidget when he speaks of the Khan. You're not just a traveler anymore. You're a bridge, carrying Kublai's will to distant lands and bringing back their secrets. You've learned more languages, snatches of Burmese, bits of Chinese enough to barter without a translator. You're good at this, maybe too good. The Mongols call you Marco the Sharp, a nod to your knack for noticing what others overlook: the pattern of a pagoda's tiles, the smell of a spice market, the way a crowd quiets when a Mongol rider passes. Here's a joke to lighten the mood. Why don't empires ever sleep? Because they've got too many secrets to keep. But the empire's edges are fraying. You see villages burned by Mongol raids, farmers fleeing with what little they can carry. The Khan's power is vast, but it's stretched thin here, and you sense the cracks, resentment in the eyes of locals, governors hoarding rice for themselves. You report it all, careful to soften the edges, knowing Kublai's advisors will pounce on any hint of weakness. You're learning the game of power, how to speak truth without losing favor. At night, under a canopy of stars, you wonder about Venice. Its canals feel like a dream, faint and far away, drowned out by the hum of this endless empire. You're changing, hardening into someone who can ride through a monsoon, charm a warlord, and sleep with one eye open. You're still Marco, still Venetian, but the East is weaving itself into you. The boy who dreamed of adventure is gone, replaced by a man who sees the world's beauty and its cost. You're not just crossing lands, you're collecting them, piece by piece, in your memory, knowing one day you'll have to tell these stories to a world that might not believe you. You're 27, standing on a windswept hill in Tibet, in 1282, the air sharp with the scent of yak butter and burning juniper. You're Marco Polo, a trusted emissary of Kublai Khan, sent to the empire's highland edges to report on its monasteries and trade routes. The sky is a piercing blue, the mountains jagged like the teeth of some ancient beast. Your Mongol escorts huddle around a fire, their faces weathered, while you clutch your cloak against the cold. You've been in the East for 7 years now, and the Mongol Empire is no longer a mystery. It's your world, its rhythms as familiar as Venice's canals once were. But every new mission shows you something stranger, something that makes you feel like a boy again, gaping at wonders you can't quite believe. You're here to inspect the province of Tibet, a land of monks and mystics where prayer flags flutter like whispers to the gods. Your task is to gauge the loyalty of local leaders and the flow of goods, wool, salt, and rare herbs through these high passes. The journey is brutal, the trails narrow and slick with ice, the air so thin your chest aches with every breath. Here's a weird detail. Some Tibetan monks carry prayer wheels that spin with a soft hum, believed to send blessings into the wind. You spin one yourself, half curious, half respectful, and laugh when a monk says it's worth more than your horse. Why do travelers always carry light? Because the road's heavy enough. The big event is your visit to a Buddhist monastery near Lhasa in 1282, a key moment in Kublai's efforts to consolidate power over Tibet's spiritual leaders. The monastery is a fortress of faith, its walls painted red and gold, its halls echoing with chants that seem to vibrate in your bones. You meet an abbot who speaks in riddles, his eyes calm but sharp, weighing you as much as you're weighing him. You see sacred texts wrapped in silk, statues gleaming with turquoise, and a ritual where monks burn incense so thick it clouds the room like a dream. You note the monastery's wealth gold offerings, yak herds, trade in salt, but also its defiance, a quiet refusal to bow fully to the Khan. Historians still debate whether Kublai sent you to Tibet to spy or to negotiate, whether you were a messenger or a pawn in his game to control the region's spiritual heart. Either way, you're deep in a land that feels like it's floating above the world. You learn to sip butter tea, salty and warm, and to nod respectfully when monks speak of reincarnation. You see things no European has, prayer flags snapping in the wind, yaks hauling salt across snowy passes, a sky so clear it feels like you could fall into it. You taste barley bread, feel the cold bite your fingers, and scribble mental notes, the number of monks, the mood of the villages, the way a trader hides his coins when you ask about taxes. You're not just an observer anymore. You're a thread in the empire's vast weave, trusted to carry its secrets back to Kanbalik. You've mastered enough Mongol and Chinese to barter, to charm, to deflect a suspicious glance. The locals call you the white-faced wanderer, a nickname that makes you grin. You notice details others miss, the way a monk's robe is patched, the smell of roasted barley, the sound of a bell ringing at dawn. Here's a joke to keep it light. Why don't Tibetans ever lose their way? Because the mountains pray them home, but the empire's edges are restless. You see villages strained by taxes, monks whispering of independence, traders hoarding goods to avoid Mongol levies. The Khan's power is a shadow here, strong but stretched thin. You report it all, careful to balance truth with caution, knowing Kublai's court will dissect your words. You're learning to play the game, to speak without speaking, to see without being seen. At night, under a blanket of stars, you think of Venice, its damp air, its narrow streets, its voices, its fading, a memory you can barely touch, drowned out by the hum of this high, wild land. You're Marco now, not just a Venetian but a man of the East, shaped by its roads and rituals. The boy who left home is a ghost, replaced by someone who can ride through blizzards, charm a monk, and sleep under a sky that feels alive. You're collecting stories, not just for Kublai, but for yourself, knowing one day you'll have to tell them to a world that might not understand. The empire is vast, but it's starting to feel like a cage, and you wonder how long you can keep wandering before you lose the way back. You're 30 now, walking the bustling streets of Kambalik in 1285, the air thick with the scent of coal smoke and roasting chestnuts. You're Marco Polo, no longer a boy marveling at the Mongol Empire, but a seasoned emissary, woven into its fabric like a thread in one of Kublai Khan's silk tapestries. The city pulses around you, merchants haggling over furs, scribes hurrying with ink-stained fingers, riders galloping through on the yam's urgent errands. You've been here a decade, crisscrossing the empire, from Burma's jungles to Tibet's peaks, carrying Kublai's orders and collecting stories no European could dream up. Your paisa swings at your chest, a golden key to this world, but your heart's starting to tug westward, toward a Venice you barely remember. You're on a new mission, sent to inspect the province of Yangzhou, a trade hub along the Grand Canal. Your job is to report on its markets, its defenses, and any ripples of dissent. The canal stretches like a liquid spine, boats gliding with cargoes of rice and silk, their sails catching the breeze like wings. You see things that still stun you. Paper money traded like gold, bridges so wide they carry entire markets, fireworks bursting over festivals like stars gone mad. Here's a weird detail. Yangzhou chefs serve fish so fresh it's still twitching, sliced thin and eaten raw, a dish that makes you wince but smile when locals cheer your bravery. Why do Mongols love a feast? Because it's the only time they sit still? The big event is your role in overseeing Yangzhou's salt trade in 1285, a cornerstone of the empire's wealth. Salt isn't just seasoning here, it's currency, taxed and guarded like silver. You visit salt pans shimmering under the sun, workers scraping crystals from shallow pools. You meet officials who bow low but watch you closely, their ledgers hiding small rebellions in numbers that don't add up. This is a key moment in Kublai's reign, as control over salt funds his wars and palaces. You note the production, the bribes, the whispers of merchants dodging taxes. Historians still debate whether you were an administrator or just a glorified observer. But in Yangzhou, you're the Khan's eyes, trusted to see through the smiles and excuses. You navigate this world with ease now, your Venetian charm sharpened by years in the East. You speak Mongol, Chinese, and Persian, switching tongues like a merchant switches coins. You know how to bow to a governor, barter with a trader, laugh with a soldier over fermented mare's milk. You see the empire's diversity, Muslims praying in mosques, Buddhists chanting in temples, Christians crossing themselves in quiet corners, all under Kublai's rule. It's a patchwork empire, stitched together by fear, trade, and the Khan's will. You notice details others miss. The way a salt worker ties his scarf, the smell of ink on a scribe's fingers, the sound of a canal boat's creak at dawn. Here's a joke to keep it light. Why don't canals ever flood the empire? Because even the water knows to obey Kublai. But the empire's seams are fraying. You see merchants hoarding salt, governors skimming profits, farmers muttering about taxes that leave them hungry. The Khan's power is vast, but it's stretched thin, and you sense the cracks widening. You report it all, your words careful, knowing Kublai's advisors will pounce on any hint of failure. You're playing a dangerous game, balancing truth with loyalty, observation with survival. At night, in a merchant's guest house, you lie awake, the hum of Yangzhou fading. Venice creeps into your thoughts, its salt air, its crowded alleys, its voices calling across the lagoon. It's been 10 years, and it feels like a dream you can't quite hold. You're not just Marco anymore. You're a man of two worlds, shaped by the East but tethered to the West. The boy who crossed the Gobi is gone, replaced by someone who can read a ledger, charm a warlord, and sleep through a storm. You're collecting stories, cities of jade, rivers of silk, rituals that hum with life, knowing one day you'll have to share them with a world that might not believe you. The Empire is your home, but it's starting to feel like a borrowed one, and you wonder how long you can walk its roads before you forget the sound of Venice's waves. You're 32, standing in the grand hall of Kublai Khan's palace in Khanbalik, 1287. The air is heavy, with the scent of sandalwood and wax, the walls draped with silk banners that shimmer like liquid gold. You're Marco Polo, a fixture in the Mongol court now, your Venetian accent softened by years of speaking Mongol and Chinese. You're no longer the curious kid who gaped at the empire's wonders. You're a trusted confidant, a man who moves through the court's intricate dance of power with ease. Kublai, older now, his beard whiter, still watches you with those sharp eyes, as if testing whether you're still the outsider he can trust. Your paisa, the Khan's golden tablet, marks you as his, but your heart's starting to wander, tugging toward a Venice that feels like a half-forgotten song. You're tasked with a delicate mission, inspecting the loyalty of a governor in Sichuan, a province of rivers and misty mountains. The journey takes you through terraced rice fields and bamboo groves, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and lotus. You ride with Mongol escorts, their chatter a mix of boasts and complaints, and you're struck by the empire's vastness, how one man, Kublai, holds it all together. Here's a weird detail. In Sichuan, some locals use trained cormorants to fish, birds diving into rivers with ropes tied to their necks, delivering their catch like feathered servants. You laugh, trying it yourself, and nearly fall into the water when the bird squawks. Why do Mongols trust birds to fish? Because they're better at it than most men. The big event is your meeting with the Sichuan governor in 1287, a tense moment in Kublai's reign as rebellions flicker in the empire's fringes. The governor, a wiry man with a nervous smile, hosts you in a hall lined with jade statues. You note his wealth, silk robes, gold cups, but also his fear, his eyes darting to his advisors when you ask about taxes or troops. You see the province's prosperity, markets brimming with tea, silk, and porcelain, temples where monks burn incense to gods you don't know. But you also hear whispers of unrest, farmers taxed to the breaking point, soldiers deserting for better pay. Historians still debate whether Kublai relied on you to sniff out betrayal or simply to report facts. But in Sichuan, you're playing a dangerous game, reading between the lines of every bow and smile. You've mastered the court's rhythms now, your Venetian charm honed into something sharper. You speak 4 languages, barter like a local, and know when to laugh or stay silent. The Mongols call you Marco the Fox, a nod to your knack for slipping through tense moments with a grin. You notice things others miss, the way a governor's hands tremble, the smell of rice wine on a soldier's breath, the sound of a temple bell echoing at dusk. You see the empire's diversity, Chinese farmers, Mongol riders, Persian traders, all living under Kublai's rule, a mosaic of faith and blood. Here's a joke to keep it light. Why don't governors sleep well? Because they're always counting the Khan's coins in their dreams. But the empire's cracks are growing. Sichuan's wealth hides its tensions, tax revolts, bandit raids, governors skimming profits. You report it all, your words measured, knowing Kublai's advisors will parse every syllable. You're walking a tightrope, balancing loyalty to the Khan with the truth of what you see. At night, in a roadside inn, the hum of cicadas keeps you awake. Venice creeps into your mind, its canals glinting under moonlight, its voices calling across the water. It's been 12 years, and it feels like a ghost, faint but persistent. You're not just a Venetian anymore. You're a man of the East, shaped by its roads, its scents, its secrets. But the West still calls, a whisper you can't ignore. You're changing, becoming someone who can charm a warlord, read a ledger, and ride through a storm without flinching. The boy who dreamed of adventure is a memory, replaced by a man who sees the world's beauty and its cost. You're collecting stories, cities of mist, rivers of fish, rituals that pulse with life, knowing one day you'll have to share them with a world that might not believe you. The Empire is your stage, but it's starting to feel like a script you didn't write, and you wonder how long you can play this role before you need to find your own. You're 35, standing on a balcony in Kublai in 1290, the city sprawling below like a tapestry of stone and smoke. The air carries the scent of charcoal and plum blossoms, and the hum of markets blends with the clatter of hooves from the yams' couriers. You're Marco Polo, a man who spent nearly 2 decades in the Mongol Empire, your Venetian roots buried deep under layers of Mongol dust and Chinese silk. Kublai Khan's court is your world now, its rituals as familiar as breathing. But there's a restlessness in you, a tug toward Venice that grows stronger with each passing year. Your paisa still hangs around your neck, but it feels heavier, a golden chain tying you to an empire that's starting to fray at the edges. You're back from a mission to the northern steppes, where you inspected the Khan's horse herds and the loyalty of nomadic tribes. The journey was cold, the wind cutting through your furs, the landscape, a sea of grass under a sky that never ends. You saw riders who live in the saddle, their lives bound to horses and honor, and you noted their grudging respect for Kublai's rule. Here's a weird detail. Some nomads pierce their horses' ears with silver rings, believing it wards off spirits. You tried asking why, got a shrug, and joked, "Do the spirits hate shiny things?" The riders laughed, but their eyes stayed wary. Why do nomads never get lost? Because the stars are their map, and the winds their guide. The big event is Kublai's decision in 1290 to send you on a diplomatic errand to the Ilkhanate in Persia, a Mongol vassal state. It's a pivotal moment in his reign, as tensions simmer between his empire and its Western allies. You're to deliver messages and assess the Ilkhan's loyalty, a task that demands more than observation. It requires finesse. You travel the Silk Road again, its dangers familiar now. Bandits in the passes, sandstorms in the deserts, the ache of long days on horseback. In Tabriz, you meet the Ilkhan, a stern man surrounded by Persian poets and Mongol warriors. You see markets overflowing with saffron and carpets, mosques with domes that catch the sun, and you note the Ilkhan's words, polite but guarded, hinting at ambitions Kublai might not like. Historians still debate whether Kublai sent you to Persia as a trusted envoy or a convenient outsider, someone who could be disavowed if things went wrong. Either way, you're in your element, reading the room like a Venetian merchant sizing up a deal. You speak Persian now, enough to trade compliments with poets and barter with traders. You notice details others miss. The way a scribe hesitates before writing, the smell of rosewater in a palace hall, the sound of a lute played at dusk. You see the empire's diversity, Muslims, Christians, Zoroastrians, all coexisting under Mongol rule, a fragile balance of power and fear. You report back to Kublai, your words careful, weaving truth with tact, knowing one misstep could cost you everything. But the empire feels different now. Kublai's aging, his grip loosening. You hear whispers of rebellion in the south, of generals plotting in the west. The court's splendor hides its cracks, corrupt officials, strained treasuries, tribes restless under heavy taxes. You're still Marco the Fox, charming and sharp, but you're tired too. At night, in a Persian guest house, the flicker of an oil lamp keeps you awake. Venice haunts you, its canals, its salt air, its voices calling across the water. It's been nearly 20 years, and it feels like a life you borrowed, not lived. Here's a joke to lighten the mood. Why don't empires last forever? Because even the biggest throne can't hold all the dreams. You're not just a traveler anymore. You're a man caught between worlds. The East has shaped you its languages, its scents, its secrets. But the West is calling, a faint song of home. You're still loyal to Kublai, still playing his game, but you're starting to wonder how long you can stay before you lose yourself entirely. You're collecting stories, palaces of jade, deserts of stars, rituals that pulse with life, but they're heavier now. Each one a weight you carry toward a future you can't see. The empire is your stage, but Venice is your shadow, and you're beginning to feel the pull of a road that leads back. You're 37, standing on the deck of a creaking ship off the coast of southern China in 1292. The sea air sharp with salt and the tang of tar. You're Marco Polo, a man who spent half your life in the Mongol Empire. Your Venetian roots now a faint echo beneath years of dust, silk, and Kublai Khan's commands. The empire's grandeur still dazzles Konbalik's marble halls, Tibet's prayer flags, Burma's golden pagodas. But you're restless, your heart pulling toward Venice, a city you haven't seen in 21 years. You're not just an emissary anymore. You're a man caught between worlds, and the chance to go home has finally come, wrapped in a dangerous mission. The ship sways beneath you, sails snapping in the wind, as you set out on a journey that might finally take you back. Kublai Khan, now in his late 70s, has tasked you, your father Niccolo, and Uncle Maffeo with a delicate job, escorting a Mongol princess, Kokochin, to the Ilkhanate in Persia for a political marriage. The overland Silk Road is too perilous. Bandits, rebellions, and warring tribes make it a death trap, so Kublai orders a sea route, a voyage through the Indian Ocean. It's a rare chance to leave the empire, and you seize it, knowing it's your best shot at returning to Venice. Here's a weird detail. The princess travels with a retinue of maids who burn incense on the ship, the smoke curling like spirits over the waves, meant to ward off storms. You joke with a sailor. Does incense scare the sea? He shrugs. Only if the sea's got a nose. The big event is your departure from Quanzhou in 1292, a pivotal moment in Kublai's reign as he strengthens ties with his western vassals. The fleet is massive, 14 ships, hundreds of crew, carrying Mongol officials, Persian nobles, and the princess in a lacquered cabin draped with silk. You set sail south along China's coast, the water glinting like jade, past fishing boats and islands shrouded in mist. You're no sailor, but you've learned to read the wind, to spot a storm's shadow on the horizon. You notice details others miss, the way a sailor ties a knot, the smell of fish drying on deck, the sound of the princess's maids singing softly at night. You're still Marco the Fox, sharp and curious, but the years have etched lines into your face, and Venice feels closer than ever. Historians still debate whether Kublai let you go willingly or reluctantly, whether he saw you as too valuable or too foreign to keep. Either way, the voyage is brutal. Storms batter the fleet in the South China Sea, waves crashing like mountains, tearing sails and snapping masts. Disease creeps through the crowded holds, fever, dysentery, men coughing blood. By the time you reach Sumatra, half the crew is dead, their bodies slipped into the sea under starlit skies. You survive, but the losses weigh heavy, and you wonder if the ocean will claim you before you see Venice's canals. Here's a joke to lighten the mood. Why don't ships sink in Mongol waters? Because even the waves bow to Kublai. You navigate the fleet through the Strait of Malacca, past jungles where monkeys scream and pirates lurk. In India, you stop at ports thick with a scent of curry and sandalwood, trading for supplies and news. The princess remains a mystery, veiled and silent, her presence a reminder of the empire's reach. You see wonders, pearl divers in Ceylon, temples carved into cliffs, but also horrors, shipwrecks, starvation, a Persian noble dying in your arms. You keep mental notes, not just for Kublai, but for yourself, knowing these stories might be all you carry home. The voyage stretches on, months turning into a year, the sea both a road and a threat. You're not the man who left Venice. You're tougher, quieter, your eyes carrying the weight of deserts, courts, and storms. The East has shaped you its languages, its scents, its cruelties, but Venice is calling, a faint hum of canals and salt air. You're still loyal to Kublai, but you're ready to go, to trade the empire's vastness for a city you can hold in your heart. The sea rolls beneath you, endless and unforgiving, and you wonder if you'll make it home, or if home will even recognize you after all these years. You're 38, stepping onto the rocky shore of Hormuz in Persia, 1293, the air thick with the scent of salt, sweat, and frankincense. The Indian Ocean lies behind you, its waves still churning in your memory after a brutal year-long voyage. You're Marco Polo, weathered by 2 decades in the Mongol Empire. Your Venetian roots, a faint pulse beneath the dust of 1,000 roads. Your father, Niccolo, and Uncle Maffeo are with you, their faces as worn as yours. But you've done it. You've delivered the Mongol princess Kokochin to the Ilkhanate. The mission is complete, but the cost was steep. Hundreds dead, ships lost to storms, and the Persian groom meant for the princess gone before you arrived. You're alive, though, and Venice is closer than it's been in years. The voyage was a gauntlet. Storms tore through the fleet in the South China Sea, splintering masts like twigs. Disease ravaged the crew, fever, dysentery, men wasting away in the humid holds. You buried them at sea, their bodies slipping beneath waves under a sky that offered no mercy. Here's a weird detail. In Sumatra, locals offered you a drink made from coconut sap, sweet and fizzy, said to cure seasickness. You tried it, laughed when it burned your throat, and joked, "Does this cure the sea, or just make you forget it?" The locals grinned, but you still felt the ship sway in your bones. Why do sailors love the sea? Because it's the only thing bigger than their stories. The big event is your arrival in Hormuz in 1293, a key moment in Kublai's diplomatic ties with the Ilkhanate. The princess, Kokochin, is handed over to the Ilkhan, a somber man who accepts her with a nod, his court a swirl of silk and suspicion. You see markets piled with spices, carpets, and pearls. Hear the call to prayer echo over mud brick walls. But the mission's success is bittersweet. Kokochin's intended died before you arrived, and the fleet's losses weigh heavy. Historians still debate whether Kublai sent you on this mission to reward your loyalty or to rid himself of a foreigner who'd seen too much. Either way, you're free now, or as free as a man can be with the Khan's shadow still looming. From Hormuz, you travel overland, retracing the Silk Road's western arm through Persia, Armenia, and Anatolia. The road is familiar, but strange deserts you crossed as a boy now feel endless, mountains sharper in your tired eyes. You notice details others miss. The way a caravan driver ties his camel's load, the smell of olive oil in a Persian inn, the sound of a shepherd's flute at dusk. You're not the eager kid who left Venice. You're a man who's seen empires rise and crack, who's learned to speak their languages, to read their lies. You carry stories, cities of jade, rivers of fish, courts of gold, but they're heavy now, each one a weight you'll have to unpack. Venice is close, but the world has changed. You hear news of war. Venice and Genoa, your city's old rival, are clashing over trade routes. The Mediterranean isn't the lagoon you left, it's a battleground. You push on, through Anatolia's dusty trails to Trebizond, then by ship across the Black Sea to Constantinople. The city's domes glint like memories, but it's not home. You're a stranger now, your clothes Mongol style, your speech laced with Eastern words. Here's a joke to keep it light. Why don't travelers ever get homesick? Because they carry home in their stories. But you're not sure anymore. Venice feels like a dream, its canals and voices blurred by years of sand and silk. You're not just Marco anymore. You're a man of two worlds, shaped by the East but tied to the West. The boy who dreamed of adventure is gone, replaced by someone who can navigate empires, charm warlords, and survive storms. You're carrying more than your pack now. Stories of an empire so vast it defies belief, of a Khan who ruled like a god, of a world Europe can't imagine. As you near the Mediterranean, the air smells of salt and possibility, but also uncertainty. Will Venice know you? Will your stories find a home? You're stepping toward a city you left as a boy, wondering if it's still yours or if you're still its. You're 39, stepping onto a Venetian dock in 1295, the lagoon's salt air hitting you like a memory you'd almost forgotten. The city's spires rise against a gray sky, familiar yet strange. The hum of merchants and boatmen, a song you haven't heard in 24 years. You're Marco Polo, your face lined by deserts, seas, and Kublai Khan's court, your cloak still dusted with the East. Your father, Niccolo, and Uncle Maffeo stand beside you, their steps slower, their eyes scanning the crowd for faces they might recognize. You've crossed empires, survived storms, delivered a princess, but now you're home, and Venice doesn't feel like yours anymore. The air smells of fish and tar, not incense or yak butter, and the voices shouting across the canals sound sharp, foreign. Venice has changed. It's 1295, and the city's at war with Genoa, its old rival, their ships clashing over trade routes in the Mediterranean. The streets are tense, filled with soldiers and whispers of battles at sea. You walk through the Rialto, expecting the bustle you knew as a boy, but the faces are new, the accents harsher. Your Mongol-style clothes draw stares. Your speech laced with Persian and Chinese words raises eyebrows. Here's a weird detail. Venetian women now wear platform shoes so high they need servants to steady them, tottering like human towers through the markets. You laugh, muttering, "Did they borrow those from a Mongol circus?" Why do Venetians love a show? Because the lagoon's their stage. The big event is your return in 1295, a quiet moment overshadowed by Venice's war with Genoa. You're not greeted as heroes, no parades, no crowds. Your family's house is still there, but your mother's gone, died years ago, and the neighbors barely remember you. You tell stories of Kublai's court, of cities with 1,000,000 souls, of paper money and fireworks, but people smirk, thinking you're spinning tales. You show them jade and silk, gifts from the East, but they're more curious about your wealth than your words. Historians still debate whether Venice doubted you because your stories were too wild or because you'd become too foreign, a man who didn't fit their world anymore. You try to settle back into merchant life, trading silk and spices, but it's not the same. Venice feels small, its canals a cage compared to the empire's endless roads. You notice details others miss, the way a trader haggles too fast, the smell of ink in a ledger, the sound of church bells clashing with market shouts. You're still Marco the Fox, sharp and curious, but you're out of place, a man who's seen too much to fit into this city of water and ambition. You tell your stories at taverns, to sailors and scribes, but they laugh or shake their heads. Cities bigger than Rome, they scoff. Next you'll say you saw dragons. The war with Genoa pulls you in. Venice needs men, and you're drafted, not as a merchant, but as a captain on a galley. Your experience on Mongol ships making you useful. You're no warrior, but you know the sea, and you sail out, the wind carrying you toward battle. Here's a joke to lighten the mood. Why don't Venetian ships sink? Because the lagoon's too shallow for their pride. But the war's no joke. Genoa's fleet is fierce, and you sense the tide turning against you. You're not fighting for glory, just survival, hoping to see Venice's canals again. You're not the boy who left anymore. You're a man shaped by the East, its languages, its cruelties, its wonders. But Venice is trying to claim you back. You carry stories of an empire, so vast it makes Europe feel small, of a Khan who ruled like a god, of roads that stretched beyond the stars. But here, in this city of water, those stories sound like myths, and you're starting to wonder if you'll ever find a way to make them real. The lagoon glitters, but it's not home, not yet. You're Marco Polo, and you're caught between the world you left and the one you can't quite return to. You're 40, shivering in a damp Genoese prison cell in 1298. The stone walls slick with mold, the air heavy with the smell of salt and despair. You're Marco Polo, no longer the emissary of Kublai Khan, but a prisoner of war, captured in a naval battle off the coast of Anatolia. Venice's war with Genoa has landed you here, far from the glittering courts of Kumbalik or the canals of your home. The cell is small, the straw on the floor barely cushioning your aching bones. But you're alive, and your mind is still sharp, brimming with stories of an empire most of these guards can't even imagine. You've crossed deserts, sailed stormy seas, and now you're here, with nothing but time and a stranger to share it with. The big event is your meeting with Rustichello da Pisa, a fellow prisoner and writer of romances, in 1298. This is the moment that will define your legacy, though you don't know it yet. Venice and Genoa's Battle of Curzola was a disaster. Genoese ships crushed your fleet, and you were hauled here in chains. Rustichello, with his quill and parchment, listens as you talk to pass the hours. You tell him of the Silk Road's dust, Kublai's marble palaces, cities with 1,000,000 souls, and paper money that baffled you at first. Here's a weird detail. You describe a Mongol drink made from fermented mare's milk, so strong it made you see stars, and Rustichello laughs, saying, "Sounds like something to get us out of this cell." Why do prisoners tell stories? Because words are the only road to freedom. You pour out your memories, the golden pagodas of Burma, Tibet's prayer wheels, the pink salt lakes of Yunnan, You describe fireworks bursting over Khanbalik, bridges woven from bamboo, cormorants fishing in Sichuan's rivers. Rusticello writes it all down, his pen scratching late into the night, turning your tales into a book that will one day be called Il Milioni, or The Travels of Marco Polo. You talk of Kublai's court, where Muslims, Buddhists, and Christians mingled under one ruler, of roads that stretched from the Pacific to Persia, of an empire so vast it made Venice look like a speck. Historians still debate whether you exaggerated. Did you really see all those places, or did you weave in traders' tales? But you insist, even years later, I didn't tell half of what I saw. The book takes shape in that dim cell, a mix of fact and wonder, your voice carrying the East to a West that's never heard such things. You describe rhinos, mistaken for unicorns, coal fires, warming cities, and a courier system faster than any European ship. Rusticello adds flourishes, making your stories sing like the romances he loves. But the core is yours, your eyes, your roads, your truths. You're not just a prisoner, you're a bridge, linking worlds through words. Here's a joke to keep it light. Why don't stories ever die? Because they're tougher than a Genoese jailer, but the cell's cold reality grounds you. Your stories are all you have, and you're not sure anyone will believe them. You're released in 1299, after Genoa and Venice make peace. You return to Venice, a city that's still fighting, still trading, still skeptical of your tales. You settle as a merchant, quieter now, your wealth modest, but your memories rich. Your book spreads, copied by scribes, read in courts and taverns, inspiring men like Christopher Columbus, who'll carry it across oceans 2 centuries later. You live to 69, dying in 1324. Your final words a whisper. I told the truth. Venice buries you, but your stories don't rest. They ripple outward, planting seeds of curiosity, stretching Europe's horizons toward a world bigger than it dreamed. You're not just Marco anymore. You're a name that echoes across centuries, a Venetian who saw the East and brought it home. The boy who left for adventure is gone, replaced by a man who carried an empire in his head. Your stories of deserts, courts, and seas are more than tales. They're a map, a challenge, a whisper to explore. As you fade into history, you leave behind a world changed by your words, a West that dares to look east because you did. You're drifting now, the echoes of Marco Polo's footsteps fading into the soft hum of a Venetian night. The canals are quiet, their waters lapping gently against stone, carrying the scent of salt and memory. You've walked with him through deserts that burned, mountains that stole your breath, and courts that glittered like dreams. His stories, spun in a prison cell, stretched the world wider, whispering of lands where paper passed for gold and empires held 1,000,000 souls. You can almost hear his voice, low and steady, urging you to see beyond the horizon, to chase what lies just out of reach. Close your eyes. Let the fan's soft whir be the wind over the Silk Road, the creak of a ship in the Indian Ocean. Marco's Venice is still there, its spires catching the last light, its markets buzzing with tales of the East. His life wasn't just a journey, it was a bridge, built from curiosity and courage, linking worlds that seemed too far apart. Sleep now, knowing his stories live on in books, in dreams, in the restless hearts of those who hear them. The East and West are closer because of him, and the road he walked is yours to wander in your own way. Good night.